Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete episode 17 of our Rimworld Ice Sheet Survival series. The last episode was full of events including a large tribal raid and the acquisition of 2 huskies. And regarding those huskies, I want to thank you all for your amazing feedback. And as promised, I randomly chose 2 of your comments in order to name the huskies. And that is also what we'll start the episode with. Thanks to the Animal tab mod, renaming the huskies is now possible, and we'll start with the male one. And the lucky winner was user Kingdom Knight 90, who suggested the name Ace. So from here on out, that is what our male husky will be named. For the female one, user Jack Daniels won the draw, and the suggested name here was Ruby. So Ruby and Ace, that is now our husky couple, and who knows, maybe we'll be able to name a 3rd husky soon. The Muffalo, by the way, was self-tamed and therefore can unfortunately not be named. In regards to the Muffalo, however, I also want to say thank you for your feedback. The comments here were kind of a mixed bag. Some of you were very much in favor of keeping it, while others said it would be better to prioritize the huskies. In the end, I have now decided on a compromise, and one that has actually been suggested in the comments as well. We are going to keep the Muffalo for one more round of wool, and then we'll slaughter it after that. So the Muffalo will remain with the colony for a few more days, and then it will serve us a bit longer in the form of Muffalo meat and leather. And those products, by the way, are also the reason I decided not to sell the Muffalo. Yes, we could get a bit of silver in return, but unfortunately our colony cannot survive on silver alone. Now, let's get things started with the first big project of the episode. Today it's time to overhaul our defenses. Right now our trap corridor here is working fine, but we can increase its killing potential by quite a bit. We can also make navigation through the traps a bit safer for Cambiar, which is definitely not a bad thing either. So we'll start things off here by deconstructing almost everything. That gives us a good amount of steel back, steel that we can use right away. Together with our reserves of over 870 steel, we will now drastically increase the number of traps here, and we'll place those new traps in a zigzag pattern. And this zigzag has an immense advantage, because Cambiar can follow the zigzag and navigate through the traps without ever being at risk of stepping on one. That was not the case in our previous 1-tile corridor. Now, as you can see, the corridor is going to be 2 tiles wide, which not only makes things a bit safer for Cambiar, but also makes room for more traps and therefore increases the killing potential. With a break in the building action, Cambiar then spends some time training the huskies, but we are still far away from having either Ruby or Ace be competent haulers. A few moments later, the Muffalo is also once again ready to be milked. Its wool, however, is still growing. Now back to the traps. As you can see, I have ordered Cambiar to build a few new walls. The previous walls were built out of steel and the one at the bottom still is. However, for these new ones we will try to save some steel and instead we'll build them out of sandstone. Not only do we have an abundance of sandstone readily available, but sandstone is actually also a bit more durable than steel. Now it takes Cambiar a while to get everything finished here, so we rejoin him on the next day, as he's just finishing up one of the doors here. Now for the majority of the time this door right here will remain open. It is after all our way to funnel enemies into the death trap. However, should we need to, we can close it and completely cut the base off from the ice sheet around it. The door on the right side then, that is going to be a steel door, and that door will remain closed at all times. It is only there to allow Cambiar quick entry and exit. Speaking of Cambiar moving around, as you can see here there is one trap that is a bit inconveniently placed, as it is in a spot where Cambiar cannot walk past it. And even though the chance of triggering a trap is incredibly low for your own characters, we will have Cambiar remove this one again, just to be absolutely safe. After a bit of animal training, Cambiar then spends the next day building more traps. This takes a while, but very slowly our defenses are taking up form. Our steel reserves are also getting quite low, but that is the price to pay for good defense. A fantastic message then as Cambiar heads back to the base. Our female husky Ruby is pregnant. So apparently it didn't take long for our huskies to get to know each other, and in roughly 23 days, that is how long the pregnancy will last, we can then hope for somewhere between 1 to 3 baby huskies. And more good news follow on the next morning. Cambiar has just trained the huskies and milked the Muffalo, and now the final deadfall trap in our corridor is constructed. For a bit of extra protection, we will now have Cambiar build another door, this one once again made out of sandstone, and serving as an emergency measure. We will leave it open for now, but should the colony get overrun, this could buy us some precious seconds. And with that, our upgraded defenses are complete. That means Cambiar can now once again focus a bit on animal training, before we then send him out for a round of hunting. Our meat reserves are looking solid for the moment, but out on the ice sheet you can never have enough, and they have spotted a polar bear at the far end of the map. With our charge rifle and the fact that Cambiar is still able to outrun a polar bear, this should be an easy fight, and one that provides us with a ton of meat. And as we successfully employ our hit and run tactic here, an eclipse hits the ice sheet, so our solar panels will stop producing power for the time being, but we should be fine with the 2 wind turbines, and at the moment we're not in the base anyway. A few seconds later then the polar bear goes down, and Cambiar can haul the corpse back to the base. At night then, a small but convenient event, as a Psychic Soothe boosts Cambiar's mood by plus 15. On the next day then, the polar bear that we hunted the day before immediately gets butchered. Our 2 huskies are consuming their meat reserves fairly quickly, and our Muffalo also only has 1 simple meal left, so an additional 194 units of polar bear meat are very welcome. Now that we have used quite a few sandstone blocks in the construction of our new defense line, I think it's about time we make some new ones, so we will have Cambiar chop a few sandstone blocks into pieces, which will then also allow us to clear a bit more rubble between the traps and the turrets. In the late evening then the eclipse comes to an end, while Cambiar is once again busy training his huskies. Now one more thing before Cambiar heads off to bed. Unfortunately, we need to move the hoopstone ring back outside. That hoopstone ring needs at least 5 empty tiles in one direction around it to be used. Inside of our base, however, it only had 4, which was the reason why Cambiar didn't use it. The next day then continues with more stone chopping and of course also with more animal training. The huskies have now been successfully trained in the hauling skill 3 times and 4 times respectively, so we are about halfway through with the training. A short while later then we have new sandstone reserves, so for the next project we no longer have to worry about construction materials. Before Cambiar heads off to bed, the Muffalo then gets milked one more time. In terms of wool, however, we still have to wait a bit. On the next morning, Cambiar begins his day by moving some of the sandstone chunks. Those are currently blocking the line of fire for the turrets and provide unnecessary cover for any enemy who makes it through our traps. With all of the stone chunks hauled over to the stockpile, we then once again send Cambiar out on the ice sheet. And this time we will not have him hunt, but instead we'll have him mine. In some of the previous episodes we actually had several silver meteorites crash down, and those are pretty much free money, they only need to be mined. And that is exactly what we'll have Cambiar do now with the one that is closest to the base, and we will mine silver here up to Cambiar's maximum carrying capacity, which for silver is 500 units. Alright, here we are, that's 488 units. That means we will stop mining at this point, and we'll have Cambiar haul a nice big pile of money back to the base. This now increases our silver reserves to almost 2000, so at this point I would be very interested in the opportunity to do some trading. So we'll see if a ship or a caravan passes by in the next few days. Now in the early morning hours we can have a quick look at the Muffalo, and we can see not only has it run out of food, it has also grown so hungry that it has developed malnutrition. And that is actually a small problem because malnutrition will stop the milk and the wool growth. So in order to get our last batch of wool we have no other choice but to fire up the stove and cook the Muffalo another simple meal. That will then do its part in getting rid of the malnutrition and hopefully last the Muffalo long enough to get the wool growth up to 100%. Up next on Cambiar's schedule is then more research. At the moment I dare say we have nothing else to do, so let's begin with the next research project, which is going to be the multi-analyzer. In itself, the multi-analyzer is only an object that boosts research speed. However, much more importantly, it is also the gateway to some of the most advanced technologies in the game. Once the multi-analyzer project is completed, we will for example be able to research power armor, and we also take a big step towards building our own spaceship. All of that is still far away in the future, but the sooner we start, the sooner we can get there. The remainder of the day passes by without any incident. Cambiar did spend a few more moments training the huskies, but apart from that he spent most of his time researching. On the following day then things are more or less the same. A lot of hours at the research bench, a few moments training the huskies, and the Muffalo wool still not fully grown. Research day number 3 then once again starts off pretty uneventful. However, we quickly have to change up our routine. The Muffalo's wool growth is unfortunately stuck at 99%, and the Muffalo has once again developed malnutrition, so for that final wool percentage point we have to cook up one last meal. Once the Muffalo has received its meal, however, Cambiar goes back to the research bench. However, not for long, and this time the interruption packs a punch. Our ice sheet base is now being attacked by a large number of pirates, and contrary to the last episode, these are not simple tribalists. They have access to some advanced technology, including everything from pistols to sniper rifles. In total, we are now facing 11 enemies here, and due to their range and firepower, we have to be extremely careful here. So first of all, we will be a bit patient here. There is no need for Cambiar to jump head over heels into danger. Instead, we will simply wait for a few moments until the enemies come to us. We will then have Cambiar fire up the turrets, I have a bad feeling we'll need them, before sending Cambiar out in a good position in the hopes that he can at least land a few potshots. Hidden in the corner here, he should have good cover. The enemies will arrive nicely funneled through the gaps in the rocks, and I think that should allow Cambiar to get at least one burst off with the charge rifle. And indeed, the first enemy takes a few hits here, and we have time to fire once more. However, those shots all miss, and now it's high time for the retreat. Luckily, none of our enemies actually stop to take a shot themselves here. Instead, they just continue onwards right into our defenses. Alright, here we are. First trap, first casualty. I think we should need 5 or 6 to get the enemies to flee here, so we have quite a bit more work to do. The traps, however, do their part. 4 more enemies fall in our newly constructed defenses, and the rest is now heading straight into the crossfire. Cambiar then actually takes a few hits, but at the same time we also managed to kill off enemy number 6, and that is enough to send the pirates on the retreat. However, instead of taking the easy way out, these two here are trying to smash their way through the door, which conveniently allows us to put them under fire for a while longer. Eventually then both enemies go down, and that is 8 of 11 attackers down or dead, while Cambiar is still standing with only a few minor injuries. The 2 downed enemies, by the way, could now be taken captive in an effort to recruit them. However, despite a few high skills, this first one here didn't really impress me all that much. He is incapable of hauling, and apart from research, his skills are not the most needed at the moment. Plus, he's also 55 years old and has a barrage of injuries. The other guy here, Travis, looks the same health-wise, and in terms of the skills, he's also not really all that useful. Yes, the fast learner trait combined with his young age of only 19 years sounds interesting, but I admit I'm a bit picky here. I would much rather have another cannibal, or at least someone who impresses me with a number of really high skills. We can see here, in total Cambiar took 3 hits, but all of them are now being patched up, and none of them are major injuries, so I would say after a good night's sleep he should be fully healed again. Before we send Cambiar off to bed though, the first priority are the weapons that are laying out in the open here, especially the sniper rifle that Cambiar just grabbed. I think in total our enemies here dropped 3 sniper rifles, an assault rifle, a shotgun and a few other things, so very valuable and high caliber equipment, some of which we'll sell, some of which we'll keep to use for ourselves. Either way, we don't want anything to deteriorate here, so first of all, everything that is not under a roof will be hauled into the safety of our storage room. We can also get a bit more money for the equipment if we strip it before the person who wears it dies. That way it doesn't become dead man's clothing and the market value doesn't decrease. It does of course take a bit longer to haul the individual pieces back, but I would say that's worth it for the increased prices we can get on the market. After a night full of hauling, Cambiar then also consumes his last bit of human meat, so the raid here couldn't have happened at a more convenient time. And as expected, Cambiar was able to sleep off his injuries. He is now fresh and healthy again, and can continue the rather lengthy cleanup process. In total, he needs to haul 8 more corpses and just as many weapons. There are also quite a few repairs that need to be done, and 15 deadfall traps have triggered during the attack, and of course all of those need rearming as well. And so after a long day at the defenses, the work still isn't done yet. Cambiar heads off to bed for now, but the next day will hold more of the same. And not only that, in all the trouble we almost forgot about it, but our Muffalo is finally ready to be sheared. First of all though, we will have Cambiar finish up his work at the defenses. I want to get the traps back up and running as soon as possible. We never know when Randy Random throws another raid at us, and I also want all of the equipment to be safely stored away before we do anything else, just so that nobody else can take it. By the way, in the absence of both human meat and milk, I have switched Cambiar's diet to insect jelly for the time being. We still have a bit of that lying around, it doesn't give us any bad moodlets, and most importantly, that way we don't take away meat from the huskies. Around midnight then, we once again see Cambiar fall to sleep, and yes, there are still a few items left that need hauling. Now, because Cambiar's sleep schedule is adequately screwed, he is fully rested 2 hours later, and so we can now send him out to collect the rest of the stuff, just as we have cargo pods crash on the ice sheet. This now unfortunately gives us an additional hauling job, but at the same time 168 units of camel hair, that is something that I definitely do not want to leave out there to rot. Even though camel hair is much better suited to make protection for the very hot climates, it still also does have its use in the cold, where its protective qualities are only slightly worse than those of Muffalo wool. We will not go for the camel hair immediately though. I need Cambiar to at least get a few rounds of slaughtering done, that way we can restock the colony on human meat, and Cambiar does not need to steal from the huskies. With 1 corpse butchered, we now have at least enough meat for the next few meals, and that means it is now finally time for the Muffalo. The wool on the animal is finally fully grown, and that means for the final time Cambiar can now start the shearing process. This now yields us another 100 units of Muffalo wool, and with that the time has now come to part ways. The Muffalo has undoubtedly been a very good companion out here on the ice sheet. Both the milk and the wool have been and will be immensely useful for Cambiar, but right now we have to look ahead, and in the future I see huskies, and therefore the Muffalo now gets slaughtered. On the positive side, this now opens up a room for the huskies, who now no longer have to sleep outside. In the new husky stables, Cambiar can then immediately continue the training process, while we are making the cut in today's episode. I know that we ended on a bit of a sad note here, but fear not, I still think the future is bright out here on the ice sheet. We will have little husky babies coming soon, and who knows what else Randy Random has in store for us. As always, if you liked the episode, then please go ahead and leave a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already and want to do that, then simply click on the small trophy icon in the middle of the screen. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.